Hey Mike, how's it going?
It's going great, thanks. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm super excited to chat. Uh, Leadership is something that I have battled with and trying to really skip those 5 to 10 years that it takes to get experienced because I want to be a good leader, not just for myself, but for the people I employ. I want to bring out the best of them and
Yeah.
be the type of boss that I always wanted. So I'm very excited to be able to chat with someone who's helped probably hundreds, if not thousands of people now do the same.
Thank you for having me. First off, I am looking forward to our conversation today, but I really love what you just said about not just for yourself, but for the people that you have the opportunity to serve. And in my opinion, that's what leadership's all about, leading ourselves well so we can best serve and influence and impact the people that we have the opportunity to connect with, partner with, to serve.
I do want to dig in, but before we do that, Mike, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am, again, Mike Kelly. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio now, but I'm originally from South Carolina. Grew up in a small town in South Carolina, very poor kid. Mother and father were pulled out of school to pick cotton in the South, and there were six of us in a four-room house. So I was the first in my family to go to college. My parents didn't finish high school. They only went to seventh grade, but they had a vision for me, right? My mom, she wanted me to be a strong reader, to be strong at math. Well, I ended up being the first in my family to go to college. So I went to a small university, Mars Hill University, right outside of Asheville, North Carolina. I happened to be a basketball player. I happened to be somewhat gifted in that sport, but I was also a pretty decent student. And ironically, I'm now the board chair at that university. I'm finishing my second year as board chair. But at Mars Hill University, I got a business degree. Later on, I got a master's degree in business. But as far as my career is concerned, I've worked for a couple of big brands. I've worked for Michelin, the tire company based out of France, Clermont-Ferrand. Worked for them in the Carolinas, and I've worked for Macy's. I was a vice president with Macy's, had a team of people spread out across the country, about 125 people, and that was a great experience. But how did I get to where I am today? Well, my corporate experience allowed me to get a lot of experience, a lot of exposure from a leadership standpoint. With Michelin, I had a chance to get experience in marketing, sales, finance, HR, project management, did some international project management work. And that was a great experience for me because what I realized was that when I left Mars Hill University, I was taught how to think, not what to think. So I had a growth mindset. So being thrown into some pretty challenging situations that I experienced at Michelin, I was able to learn and I was able to be productive, and that opened up other doors. The problem was for me there, though, was that I almost worked myself to death. I spent more time working than I did taking care of myself. I lost sight of the 7 F's, which you've probably heard before. There's a guy named Ron Jensen in the 7 F's. He refers to them as faith, family, fitness, finances, fun, firm, friends. Firm is your job of business. And what I found is oftentimes, especially men, we tend to spend more time on the firm than we do everything else. I made it through all that, learned from it, and now I'm able to empathize with people who are going through that I have the opportunity to work with. But ultimately, I left Macy's on my own, walked away and started a couple businesses, one with my wife, coaching firm, Right Path Enterprises, and we do some training on leadership as well. And I started a financial planning firm, Kelly Financial Planning, which we incorporate life planning principles in the financial planning process, because I also saw that many people were stuck because they didn't handle their money well. They had aspirations and dreams, but they weren't handling their money well. So they couldn't move forward into those things that really they were passionate about.
Mike, growing up, this successful career in the corporate world, probably wasn't necessarily in your cards, especially growing up where you were and with a poor family. Talk to me a little bit about how you saw yourself be successful, go to college when no one else had, and just dealing with all that negativity.
It's an interesting thing. One of the things that my parents did, and this was especially true of my mom, was they kept us in church. So church was one of those things that gave me a sense of what was important, what mattered, and really just this importance of how I'm here for a purpose. I have a purpose, and morals, values, faith, all those things were helpful to me. But in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, very quickly, My mom wanted me to be a really strong reader, and she wanted to be strong at math, right? Really good with math. Reading in particular introduced me to a world that I could not get exposed to because we didn't have the resources. So I read everything that I could get my hands on. The more I read, the more I realized that there was so much more. And as I realized that, I started to dream. And as I started to dream, I started to take steps. I wasn't even aware of what it meant to set goals at that point in time. But I realized that if you have a desire and you take steps, then things start to occur. So my faith was very, very important, but also reading. Reading was one of those things that opened my mind to the world. And the more I got exposed, the more I wanted to get exposed. And I feel like curiosity, innovation, being willing to test things, being willing to fail and move forward, learn from your failures and move forward is truly all integrated all throughout my story.
We talked a little bit earlier before we started recording about sales, and I think being able to sell and being able to be rejected, have some thick skin, such an important skill, especially for when you're young, because entrepreneurship is all about getting hit and getting back up and getting hit and falling and getting back up again. So that's something that at least, now I have young children. That's something that I've really been trying to instill. If you can learn how to get up after falling, then you can almost really achieve anything.
That is so true. Being resilient. And one of the things that can help us be resilient is having a personal mission statement. Many companies have mission statements. Most companies do, but very few individuals have a mission statement. I've learned as I've spoken and coached people around the country. So having a mission statement, somewhat of a compass, something to lead you forward, can be really helpful when you're discouraged, when you want to give up. I am someone who had that sales exposure in my career, and I will tell you, it wasn't easy. And it wasn't one of those things that was first on my list, because I always saw sales as this dirty thing out there that I didn't want to get involved with. But I will tell you, looking back, spending 10 years in sales with Michelin, selling earth mover tires, tractor trailer tires in the backwoods of Kentucky and Indiana and Ohio, really strengthened my skills, my ability to relate to people. And was true as a Black man, African-American, in areas where there weren't many of us. And most of my customers, I would say 99%, were majority population. But I will tell you, sales has really been a blessing to me in many ways, and it's benefiting me in my life and my career in many ways, because it equips you to really engage people, listen, understand people at a deeper level very quickly.
Since you've been listening to this podcast episode this far, I hope you've gotten a ton of value from it. It would mean the world to me if you could send this to one other person so that they could benefit from it too. Even though that feels like a long time ago, it really wasn't. The world was very different 50, 60 years ago. So tell me, how did you approach some of these people that you had to sell things and not know, what how they would visualize you? How would they see you? Would they be racist? So tell me, especially because fortunately, most of the time, there's still racism, but most of the time when you approach someone to sell them something, you don't have that type of animosity. But it's still scary, right? And you still have objections that you have to deal with. So tell me, how, in such an intricate and delicate situation, how did you kind of go about doing? Because at times, really, your life could be in jeopardy if you didn't say or do the right thing.
Yes. So true. Michelin did a great job of training sales people before they put you out into the field. We spent the first 3 months, about 3 months, 3 months, traveling around the country with a coach, I called him, or mentor, who made calls with you, cold calls all day long, was part of this training. So you had the theory, learning the tread patterns and how to engage people and all those things, but they'd take you out and you'd make calls. And we would break down the calls when we got back to the car. What worked well, what didn't. That was very, very helpful, because when I was out there on my own, I realized what I really need to focus on. And one of the things that made it a lot easier was really asking good questions and being more interested in the people that you were engaging rather than trying to be interesting. So I managed my question to statement ratio. And that worked really well. And that's true even today. Most people want to be heard. They want you to listen to them, whether you agree or not. But when you listen well, you actually learn what you need to know in order to be able to engage them in the way that they want to be engaged. And that was something that was really helpful for me, asking the questions. And in addition to that, having the expertise. The other thing I learned was that when you are able to help people make money, whether you're blue, black, green, it doesn't matter. They will ultimately respect you. They may not like you, but they'll respect you. And I realized that being excellent, being very, very well-trained, and being knowledgeable about what you're selling, starting with yourself, because you got to know yourself in order to be able to engage someone else well. But in addition to that, the product tends to encourage or promote respect, mutual respect.
Mike, I know you talk to a lot of young entrepreneurs, and this personal mission statement is pretty interesting. How do you mentor or coach people to kind of craft one of their own?
There are a few steps there. So the first thing that we do is we think through purpose. What is your purpose? Why are you on this earth? What are your gifts? What are you passionate about? And then we get into this conversation around a vision of your life. And I often ask a couple different questions. One is, say you're 100 years old, you're sitting on your porch, reflecting over your life, looking over a lake with your favorite beverage, whatever that is. What do you want to see? Let's get a picture in your mind. What would you like to see at that point in time? Because it'll get here soon enough. So that challenges you to think about what matters most to you. Sometimes I will incorporate a question 3 from the Kinder Institute of Life Planning, where I get registered, certified through that organization, but they have a question 3. And the question 3 is, if you went to your doctor and your doctor told you that, hey, you've only got 24 hours left to live, what feeling comes across you as you are dealing with your own very real mortality? And more importantly, what are those things that you won't get to do, be, or see? So the individual has a chance to think that through. And from that, hopefully we can get a clear understanding of what they want to achieve in their lives, what matters most to them in their lives. And after we have somewhat of a vision and we thought through purpose, then we talk about, okay, how do you live that out? And that's where the mission statement comes in. And we develop a mission statement, and you might come up with a first draft, and it's not going to be the final draft, but coming up with something can be profound. And once my clients come up with something, I challenge them to memorize it to the point where if someone woke them up in the middle of the night, they could wake up and recite their mission statement. And what we do then is make it even more real. We actually set goals aligned with that mission in the areas of life that are important for all of us when we think of priorities. And there are many ways to look at a wheel of life, but the faith, family, fitness, finances, fun, firm, friends. I challenge them to set goals in those areas, meaningful goals, smart goals, aligned with that mission statement. And when they do that and start to make steps and have success, it's amazing to watch people come alive.
Yeah, 2 quick points. One, I've heard something very similar where if you had passed away and someone is saying your eulogy, what do you want them to be saying? What do
Yeah,
you want them to remember you for?
yeah,
And having that vision, all your friends and family are there, the people you love most on earth. What are you known for? What are
yeah.
they remembering you? What are the things that you did that everyone's like, wow, that was amazing? And second point, when you have, and you mentioned compass earlier, and that's such a great analogy where you have a North Star, you have a rule. So, for example, I work nights and I have a rule I don't eat after 7 p.m.
Mm,
And it's so easy, right? I don't eat past 7 p.m. There's no, doesn't matter what it is. It could be vegetables, which it's not going to be. No one eats vegetables after dinner. It's going to be cookies. It's going to be, cake, Taco Bell or something. But having this uh, guidepost, which, it's just eating, but having something that you can point to and say, hey, my life is according to this. I think it just makes life so much easier to make that decision, to make all your decisions, especially in a world that we have to decide so much and we have to make so many choices. It's really exhausting to do that. To have some guidance from the inside just makes life so much easier.
That is so true, because we are pressured every day with marketing messages from everywhere, to do, to be, to buy. And oftentimes they can be tempting, and they can challenge us to maybe travel a road that we're not necessarily passionate about or interested in. And having an understanding of what really matters to you, your why first, your purpose, a vision of what that looks like, living it out, and a strong mission statement can be powerful. It can, especially for leaders, it can equip you really to lead others well. And that's what I find so often. Many times when we end up, we're leading other people, but we haven't learned to lead ourselves well. And if we don't do that, it shows up when we're under stress at work. People might see a side of us that we don't necessarily want them to see. And part of it is because we are stressed out, and we're burnout, and we're tired, and we haven't really taken the time to invest in ourselves. There's a gentleman named Jim Rohn. You've probably heard of Jim Rohn. He has a quote that I shared with my team when I was last in my corporate career, and I shared a lot even now. And the quote is, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. He said, if you work hard on yourself, you will earn a living. If you work hard on your job, you'll earn a living. Work hard on yourself, you will earn a fortune. And the fortune is not necessarily money. It can be joy and peace of mind. And I really like that quote. And it's one of the quote that I've adopted personally in my own life.
Have you heard of the parable of the Mexican fisherman and the businessman?
I have not.
Yeah, so quickly. So this businessman sold a business, super successful, and goes to Mexico and goes fishing on his yacht. Sees this Mexican fisher who caught a bunch of fish, and he goes to him and says, "Hey, I just had this big success and I'm feeling very, very generous. You're obviously a good fisherman. Let me teach you how to hire a bunch of fishermen, build a company, and so on." And the fisherman says, "Why would I want to do that?" He says, "So you can have a new car and on and on and on. So you can build a business and it all." And he keeps saying all this stuff. And he says, "So then you can go fish in Mexico, you know?" And the Mexican fisherman says, "But I already do all that. Why would I want to go through all this stuff just to get to back to where I am right now, you know?" And I think a lot of times we forget what our goal is. And I see this all the time. A lot of people's goal is to spend more time with family, and that's the first thing that they sacrifice, you know. And not to say that you don't have to do a little bit of sacrifice, because the time, the money has to come from somewhere. But if every single time the family, or maybe your faith, or maybe something else is the first thing to go for your business, then it makes me wonder if your values are kind of turned around or upside down.
Mm. And why do you think we do that, Renee?
I think I think we overvalue what we want in the future, and this is one of the things that I have been trying. So my dad provided very well for us, but he was never home. Had to work multiple jobs, and we were able to pay for good schooling and private schooling and all that. But really, was it that necessary? Maybe not. Making money now, I'm seeing, making money is the easy part. Childcare is the difficult part, no doubt. It's being taken care of. I just have a son and another on the way, and it's a lot of work, like crazy amounts of work. And I think there's a way to balance it and balance life. And all the money in the world, it doesn't really matter. We've been fortunate that he's still around, but I've seen other people's parents, and even my mom passed away early. That we didn't have her forever, so it would have been nice to spend more time with family. Because life isn't guaranteed. So we have this potential future greatness where we're all retired and having a ton of fun, but that's a potential, and I think most of us would be willing to sacrifice or make that a little bit further away to enjoy life along the way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. Thank you for sharing that with me. With us, because there's more than me here, but I think about conditioning, how we are often conditioned over the course of our lives, especially starting young. We're exposed to a lot of different things, but family, school, church, community, friends, and then ultimately college, jobs, or wherever you go. You tend to see the world a certain way based on what you're exposed to, and you develop certain habits. And a lot of times we're not even aware of our habits. What happens is we pass those down, and it just continues. like you shared with your dad. He did the best he could based on what he knew. So you've learned, you've realized, okay, I need to change this. And sometimes that can be hard to do, break that conditioning once you realize it. So kudos to you for making steps to change that for your family. And I will say one of the things that has helped me, because I've been on that same journey, is defining success for myself. I thought I knew what success really meant, but I hadn't taken the time to define it during my time at Michelin when I hit a wall, when I won't go into that, but just working, almost working myself to death. But I really ended up defining success for me as really becoming all that I'm designed to be. What I realized is that our society challenges us to think about success in the context of the 5 Ps, something I learned from this Ron Jensen guy, again, from California: pleasure, prosperity, power, prestige, and position. And we tend to adopt that as our definition of success. And a lot of times it's not even conscious. So we're doing these things, but we're not even aware of them. We just keep going like robots.
One trick that someone has taught me, or idea, way to conceptualize things, is if someone, and I told my business partner the same thing. If someone gave you $50 million, if they bought our business for $50 million, how would your life look differently?
Mm.
And we were speaking about just the business and how it changed. And I told him, I don't want someone to buy the business, because I would go out and create another business. It'd look pretty similar, because I really enjoy this business and the impact, helping people. I love our employees. So my life would probably not look very different, maybe a couple more vacations, but it would look pretty similar. And I think for me, that's success, right? Being able to do what you want to do without worrying about money. Maybe I'd have nicer airplane tickets, but other than that, not that big of a deal. And I think I'm pretty fortunate to be in that position. And it really is not reflective of my bank account, because my bank account's not that much different than it was when I first started attending life, as a full-time doctor. But I think it's positioning myself and taking up, being an entrepreneur, getting a little money elsewhere to position myself in where I want to be. So, the next 10 years probably won't look very much different than this year. Hopefully I get a couple more downloads per episode, but other than that, pretty much the same.
I hope you do get a couple more downloads of episodes, because the conversation is great and it needs to be heard. We need to hear this type of a conversation more often. Thank you for the work you're doing. You're making a difference. And I'll tell you, the world desperately needs your gifts.
Thank you, Mike. I want to talk about something. We talked about scaling up. A lot of us new entrepreneurs are going from the solopreneur to maybe having our first employees, and maybe they're fortunate like I am, where we're starting to get past that 5 number of employees. The concern is, how do you do it in a reasonable manner where you're taking care of your employees, but also that you're not burning out yourself?
That is a topic that is so important these days. It is so important, as entrepreneurship is becoming the topic of the day. Most people they aspire to become entrepreneurs, and those who are entrepreneurs, they want to become quote unquote successful. They want to scale and they want to do more. They want to be more. And that drive oftentimes is good, but it can be bad if we don't take the time, in my opinion, to plan. So having a strategic plan for your business is important, but in my opinion, it's even more important when it comes to your life, a life plan. And a life plan incorporates all those areas we've talked about: your finances, your family, because it all comes down to, how am I going to spend my time? When it comes to your life, how am I going to spend my time? What matters most to me in those areas, those priority areas of life? And if I say these areas matter to me the most, am I actually investing an adequate amount of time in these areas? And you talked about that earlier, being able to spend time with your family, very, very important. And with respect to the business, if I'm scaling up, I'm building a business. And this is particularly true if I'm going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 people. Well, when it was all me, it was all about me. As I get more people, I've got to be concerned about my people as well. They're not robots. You may have some robotics in your business, but they're not robots. The people are, and they need your attention as a leader. They need you to care for them, understand them. They need for you to develop them. They need for you to listen to them. And that takes a different skill set and a different focus and a different investment of time. There are a ton of people across this country and across the world working in organizations every day, large and small. They've quit and they're still on the payroll. They show up every day. They do just enough to get by. And unfortunately, many of us leaders, we've lost sight of that. So when you take a look at the bottom line, it's being impacted. We may not realize it. It may be hard for us to quantify, but it's real dollars. So in my opinion, it's starting with leading myself well. And we talked a little bit about that earlier, but also how do I figure out how I'm going to lead my business well? What plan will I develop? But it's not just developing the plan. Then it's actually, as the plan comes to life, taking the steps necessary, investing your time in a way that's necessary in order for you to focus on what matters most. And in my opinion, in any business, it's your people.
Let's dig in for people. Right now in 2022, it's a seller's market where people are able to pick where they want to work and really their compensation. And so retention is such a big issue, hiring great people and retaining them. And a big part of that is trying to show them what you're passionate about and also spending time with them. So how do you balance spending time on yourself and not burning out and all that, everything that entails, but also taking care of your employees, giving them the time and passion that they need? How do you balance that, and how do you look about that as two different things?
Well, I'll go back to my last corporate job. In my current businesses, one is just my wife and me. The other, I run it myself. And we actually 1099 a few people to help us there. But I'll go back to my corporate job where I had people spread out across the country. I had a few people in Cincinnati where I live, about 40. I realized for me that if I did not take care of myself, I would not be a very good leader of people. There were a lot of competing priorities at work, because at Macy's during the time, we had a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on. I actually had the opportunity to build a department that didn't exist initially when I joined the company. So I built a department, that took a lot. But even before I started to add people to the team and build the team up, I actually spent time personally from a planning standpoint, determining how I was going to allocate my time. Part of that was a time study, time audit of my day. How am I spending each day? One of the things I realized was that I was wasting a lot of time doing things that weren't productive. And as I started to add people, I went back, I did another audit of my time, and I realized the same thing. And because I was doing that, I was staying at work 2 or 3 hours longer than I needed to. So what I did was I started to schedule my priorities rather than prioritizing my schedule. And that was getting to the gym a certain time, spending a certain amount of time at the gym, taking some time out to sit in my office, putting in my calendar to meditate, to pray, to relax, and also put time into my calendar during this time of the day, regardless of what's going on. I'm going to make every effort to spend time walking the department, talking to the team, or people in remote locations as my assistant to set up meetings where I would talk to people one-on-one to get to know them, to listen to them. And as I started to do more of that, and I continued to improve upon it, it got to the point where people were motivated, they were inspired, they wanted to do more. I was able to empower, and I had even more time to focus on things that mattered to me. And people were more engaged, and they were more productive, and they loved what they did. And I felt that people were fulfilled. I was whole, and it was just a great thing. And I encouraged my team members, especially my direct reports, who were part of my leadership team, to make sure that they were doing the same things. Work hard on yourself than you do on your job. And they adopted that quote as well. And that's something that helped us stay whole while we also accomplished tremendous results within that community or that on that team. And it's something that I think about today. And as I'm working with clients, I share that with them as well. It starts with me. And I wrote a book related to that. It's called Leaderfluence: Secrets of Leadership, Essential to Effectively Leading Yourself and Positively Influencing Others. Time is so precious. I think Carl Sandburg said, time is the coin of your life. It's the only coin you have. Be careful lest other people spend it for you. So we've got to invest our time on the things that matter most to us.
I'd like to zoom in a little bit on what you said. So you didn't have 5 people that were working under you. You had over 100, right? 120-ish people.
125.
Yeah, yeah. So doing Zoom calls, it wasn't, it wasn't a, oh yeah, these 2 people I'll check in every month. You were probably pretty busy doing that. And so a lot of times what I've seen from leaders is that they do things that don't necessarily scale up. And th it takes work, right? You can't just become a good leader and outsource everything. You can't expect everyone to, because then what are they going to do? They're going to outsource it, right? And so on and so on. It's being this person that you want everyone else to be, and that is leadership, right? And working on yourself to be that good person that you want to everyone else to be. And we've seen the opposite. We've seen, maybe Uber is a good example. A couple of years ago, you could see that up top, the leadership was having issues and being ruthless, and all the way went down to organization where they had to do a full revamp of the whole leadership team.
I remember that. And that's happening at Uber, and it's happening at companies across across the country, across the world. And you've heard it said, I'm sure, that people don't leave companies, they leave bad bosses. They're leaving the bosses. And as bosses, we have to step back and look in the mirror. And that can be difficult. The other thing I learned too is that the higher you go in an organization, the more people will tell you what they think you want to hear rather than what you need to hear. And as you're scaling your business from 1 to 5 to 10, whatever that number is, you have the paycheck, right? Having that paycheck, being in control there, tends to give you power, authority, and people tend to be careful about how they engage you. We have to work harder at making people comfortable so that they tell us what we need to hear rather than what they think we want to hear. When we as leaders have people around us who are willing to be honest with us, then we can change, then we can grow, then we can develop, then we can be better leaders. And that's not true just at work. That's true at home, in the community, and other places where we live, work, and play.
You can see that right now in the highest levels. Look at the Twitter takeover. Look at this war in Ukraine. You have a lot of people that are in charge and smart being told, oh yeah, that's a great plan. Good job. You should totally buy that. You should totally go to war. It'll last 3 days. And months later, they're realizing, yeah, maybe this wasn't as great of an idea as I thought. But everyone kissed butt and told them that they're the smartest person walking this earth.
Yes, we read our own press clippings sometime as leaders, and we have to be careful of that because what we're reading might be wrong, and we're deluding ourselves, and that's not a good thing. Leadership, in my opinion, is a huge responsibility. It's a precious responsibility. When you have the opportunity, when you are in a responsible role and you have the opportunity to lead people, we should approach that as a servant, in my opinion. We have the power, we have the authority. The goal is to get to the point where we don't necessarily need to use it. People will work for us because they want to, not because instead of work for us, work with us because they want to and not because they have to.
Mike, one question that I ask everyone: if there was something that you wish you would have spent more resources on, either time or money, when you first started out as an entrepreneur, what would that be?
I did quite a bit of this, but I would have done even more, spending time and money on learning how to be a better leader of people and how to, in the sales thing as well. If I had not had sales experience, I would have spent more money up front on learning how to engage people, how to sell, how to talk about the features, advantages, and benefits of a product, how to learn what mattered most to my customers, my clients, so that I could find out how I connected that with my ability to serve them in those areas. Learning, having a growth mindset is so important, I realized, and in a dynamic, ever-changing environment, it's going to become even more important. So spending and investing more time in learning, not just reading books, which I do a lot of, going to various seminars and conferences, take certain certifications, which I continue to do now, but I would have done even more of that. And I will, my plan is to do even more of that, encourage those that I have the opportunity to serve to do that as well.
Mike, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thank you again for having me. Keep making a difference. The
Yeah.
world
Oh,
needs.
sorry. One thing, Mike. If I know people are going to want to reach out to you, tell me where we can find the book and where people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, I can be found at LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on Twitter as well, and you can go to my websites, take the right path, rightpathenterprises.com. My book, Leaderfluence, can be found there. There's a tab. It'll be released to Amazon on January the 10th. It'll be there. You can order it from Amazon then, and it'll be available. But you can reach me there, and you can reach out, give me a call, set a time on my calendar. Would love to talk more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike.
You're welcome. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you have any questions or would like to follow me, please sign up for my newsletter at fromamd.com.